as this guy will cheer us up. TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger joins us on the Insider Hotline. Morale is down. The vibes are not immaculate here in Calgary, Dregs. Tough one.
Yeah, I caught part of it. So I
sorry about the F-bombs.
I'm guessing that we have concerns with the officiating review, all of that.
Well, we were saying that Rhett's kids said the refs screwed us. And Rhett said, let me tell you something. Grab a chair, hop on old dad's knee if you want to hear about getting screwed by the
Go in the crease. I was there. I saw
VHS tape right over there. The one that says 99.
I was in the building. I saw it firsthand. I was there for that. But I mean, look, if we're referring to the kicked in goal last night, that wasn't, or the goalie interference, all of that. I mean, for me, it goes hand in hand. It's the intensified time of year. So the players, you know, they're running full octane. Likewise for the coaches, at least, you know, that's the acknowledgement that I get from hockey operations of the National Hockey League and from the head of officiating on an annual basis. And this year is no different. The only thing I will submit, and so I have no problem with hearing from the Flames dressing room and their concerns. That's being honest. I mean, you feel like you got cheated. You feel that way, right? Heat of the moment, that's how you see it. You know, and then Brendan Gallagher last night, post-game in Montreal, after that loss to the Flyers, I mean, he went off like a rocket. I don't know if you guys heard that sound, but he called him incompetent. He went hard, and talked. I think he was talking about the Situation Room and stating that they don't know the game. Well, okay, that's where it's not my job to defend, but I can push back on that a little bit because, you know, you've got Colin Campbell, who is the head of that department. You can argue maybe you shouldn't be anymore, right? I mean, make the full scale changes, get fresh thinkers, eyes, everything in there. But he was a longtime player, coach, was in management, now has been in the office of hockey operations at the NHL level forever. Chris King, former player, has been in hockey ops for a long, long time. Kay Whitmore, former goalie, in hockey ops for a long, long time. Rod Pasma, I mean, go down the list here, right? And all of these men have been involved since the adopting of the video review process. So they were the guys that this whole process was kind of built around to oversee. And then let's fast forward to last week, right? And you've got the general managers in a room. Craig Conroy was there. Kent Hughes and the Montreal Canadiens, they were there. They looked at those 54 goalie interference plays and agreed in a majority fashion with 52 of the 54. So the takeaway was, now the room is calling it the way that it should be called. And if the call on the ice is no goal or good goal, make sure you've got the irrefutable evidence to overturn that call on the ice, to overturn the judgment of the on-ice crew. And, you know, all managers were basically in lockstep. So now you come to this week, where's the disconnect here? Like, is that messaging not moving down from the manager to the coach and then to the players? Like, heat of the moment
are so high, right?
You know,
Like you said, it's the time of year.
It wouldn't move down either. To answer your question, Conroy wouldn't come down and tell the guys they're doing a good job of calling from the replay room.
But you know, I think it was Gallagher who referenced the Palmieri disallowed goal on Merzlikins, right? The Islanders and the Blue Jackets last week. And I mean, everybody looks at that and goes, well, how is that not a goal? Like, but again, I don't want to sound like I'm defending the league in this. I went through that whole process with them last week and it opened my eyes a little bit. That doesn't mean that whole process shouldn't be scrutinized moving forward. I mean, the obvious step for me would be to, you know, bring all coaches into that room and go through that same process. So every coach can look at the 50 toughest goalie interference calls that they've gone through this year. Do it in the off season so these guys aren't worrying about stuff they shouldn't have to worry about, but then get their viewpoint on it. And then, you know, send every clip you have to send. Like those issues that we saw last night involving the Flames and then involving the Montreal Canadiens, why wouldn't you isolate those clips with a full-on explanation and either send them out with a full video? They do explain briefly, And I think Eric Francis actually quoted Rod Pasma, right, from the Situation Room. Send that to every goalie. And I don't care if those goalies get 100 of them a year. Okay, here's a 2-minute video explanation of why this was called goalie interference in this game, between the Islanders and the Blue Jackets. And maybe the goalie then can look at it and go, okay, I don't necessarily agree with it, but at least I understand it. And I think that's where the breakdown happens across the league, from player to coach, from coach, player to management to the head office of the National Hockey League.
Did you see the comments from Farabee last night? Because you had mentioned going to the room. I don't know if that was just the Gallagher reference or the Flames reference from last night.
Well, no.
He just said if the ref told me if it was glove side, it would have been a goal, but it was blocking side, so it's not a goal.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand that. Yeah,
it sounds like
understand that.
Yeah.
Now maybe he's misheard something, but it's just it feels like there's so much interpretation.
We can move on. It's kind of this is an age-old thing.
It is age-old, especially this time of year, as you said, Boomer. Every year we go through this. It's just what makes it more absurd is that the league just went through it in an exhaustive fashion with their general managers, and yet here we are going through.
I'll tell you what happened at that meeting. Kind of like when we talk about this,
right? Yeah.
The GMs just come.
Yeah.
Well,
all in favor? Aye.
Well,
do we go for lunch? Is that yes? Good.
On Tuesday,
time.
Tuesday on TSN, we're having this argument. Jeff O'Neill goes, "You know what they were watching in that meeting? Those meetings, cartoons. That's what they were watching." I'm like, they weren't watching cartoons.
You had a note on your X this morning regarding Connor Zary, who it was. The second time this year he has gone down with a knee injury or a leg injury. It's the same leg, and he has been writhing in pain. It's been hard to watch. The first one ended up being maybe not as catastrophic as maybe we thought at first, and maybe the same here. What are you hearing?
Well, and I had to couch it and qualify it a little bit because, again, it's pending further testing and imaging, right? So, they've got to get a full structural look, a picture of is there damage, and if so, how much? So the initial assessment, my understanding is that they felt like both the MCL and the ACL were still intact. So that would have been the initial assessment. To me, that sounds like good news when you see how that play unfolded. And then, to your point, you see Connor Zary writhing in pain and clutching that knee, the same knee that he injured in January. So we'll see where it goes after they go through the full medical process. But initially, they were encouraged that maybe it isn't going to be as bad as it looked.
Either way, feels like that's a season ender, being that there's
11 games
left.
Maybe.
The whole thing, you had the injury, you had an incredible effort, 106 or 7 shot attempts on net, you had goal posts and all of this. And then you come back to it, they still lost to the Stars. And it was the same a week or a month ago. They went into Dallas on the road trip. Last game, we had it as one of those scheduled loss, and they played very well, and they did lose. They got a point out of it. Elite teams, the Stars got 2 goals in a minute 16. And then with all the pressure on their goalie, one chance comes down the ice, and a all-world player puts it in the roof, Mikko Rantanen. It's why that's where you want to. And I get that DeBoer is pissed off because the same thing happened in Edmonton where they had a lead and then they pissed it away. But elite teams find a way. Is what it comes down to. It's hard, but it's frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, but I think I see Dallas as being that. I see Dallas being an elite level team, and I don't think any of us would be surprised if they found a way to march to the conference final, maybe to the Stanley Cup final. But that it's going to be a tough path when you look at what's coming out of the West potentially, or going into the playoffs anyway, with the likes of Vegas, who are top notch. The Oilers seem to be kind of kicking themselves in the shins, and now they too are going through some injury issues. What is Colorado going to be with all of the fresh faces that they have there and the changes that they made in Colorado, and go down the list? The Winnipeg Jets. I'm still vividly reminded by a conversation we had with Scott Arniel in the first half of the year, where they went on that torrid pace right out of the gate. and, talked about, was the team that much better than they were in the playoffs? And he said, no, but what's fueling us is a level of embarrassment. We were embarrassed in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And so that's a deep-rooted motivator. And Winnipeg seems to be continuing to feed off that. So Dallas is in that group, but it does feel from the crease out that Dallas now, especially with Mikko Rantanen, and even the ads of Granlund and Cody Ceci, when they brought those two guys in sneaky fashion from the San Jose Sharks, it's a well-built team from top to bottom and well-coached on top of that.
Do you have a timeline on when Heiskanen's going to return? There is now some whispering you might miss a bit of round one, and they got Colorado. I don't know how they don't face each other round one, given that Winnipeg's flying and Minnesota's slid closer to wild card 2 than third in that division. That would be a huge blow for them to have to face Colorado without him.
Yeah, and it's possible, to be fair. I haven't checked this week, I'll be honest with you, but the measurement was that Tyler Seguin would probably be first. And then Miro Heiskanen would come in right after that. But is it, a few days? Is it a week? Is it 2-3 games of a playoff series? I don't know. But, when Heiskanen comes back, then they're basically up to full complement, be a huge boost.
I brought it up the other day, and it's just when you're, what it's like, you're going through notes, and I probably should have known this. We do a show every day, but it just kind of struck me as we get ready for what looks to be a Kings-Oilers first round, and it may be the Kings at home. The Kings have 3 regulation home losses all year, 26-3-4. Yeah. Good heavens.
It's crazy. Yeah. It's a wild one. And also part. Yeah. It's also part of why, I live in the greater Toronto area. So anytime the Toronto Maple Leafs lose a game that they just can't lose, shouldn't lose, as they did last night and losing the San Jose Sharks again, it just turns this market upside down. And that was the case this morning on morning radio, but less to do with a game that you shouldn't lose, obviously the worst team in the league in San Jose, but more about what you've got coming right around the corner. And next stop for Toronto is LA. And, LA at home, as you guys have just, amplified, is just lights out good. But that too is a good team. I kind of glossed over the teams in the West, but how do you look beyond the Los Angeles Kings and the possibilities there? They're maybe not quite as deep as some of the better teams, but it looks like they're well positioned and well built. And given how stingy they can be defensively and how well they protect their own sheet, I mean, LA is going to be a tough out. And you're right. I think it looks like they play the Oilers, right? And, Craig Button, who I gotta love him. He's never afraid to just, throw it out there. Trade deadline day just announced. He goes, he put up all the brackets. Okay, here's what round 1 looks like today. Edmonton's playing LA. Sorry, Oilers fans. The Oilers are going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. Just bang, like that. But it's plausible, right? It is. So, but to me, that is more to do with the LA Kings from a positive perspective than it does, the Oilers stumbling and bumbling in a series like that.
Like, I can only imagine what it must be like out there. And it's no disrespect when we talk about in the East, how many of the Sharks, Kings get, like, who's the coach of the LA Kings? Like, I got to Google this stuff. It's the Kings had 3 regulation losses. That's unbelievable.
Got a bunch at home left too. Like 7 left at home.
Part of the Flames' woes right now, and I know we talked about it last week and we wondered about, offer sheets and that, but St. Louis, they've kind of done this before where we're not really all that good. And then we go on an incredible run. Yeah. And then look at us go. It's 15-2-2 or whatever it is. They won 8 straight. Another come from behind win last night, which also hurts the Flames. Yeah. Dylan Holloway is on an unreal tear, and Broberg continues.
Terrific.
The other night.
Fowler's been playing great. They added him quietly earlier in the year. He's on an incredible run and Parayko's not even there right now.
Yeah. No. I mean, you talk about teams getting hot at the right time. And if you're Winnipeg or Vegas, play St. Louis in round 1.
Stinks.
Not exactly what you play all season to finish first for. They could go the other way, obviously, but damn, that's a hot team if they can keep this going for another 10, 11 games and head into the playoffs like this.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And, you look at Kyrou and Thomas and the middle of the pack guys who they absolutely needed this year to find a way to step up. And it's been a while. Like, that has been a development ladder that's been tough to climb for those two guys, but it looks like they're well on their way. And I think we've talked about this before. I just admire the way that Doug Armstrong goes about doing his business. And not just because how well the offer sheet scenarios have played out, but, he clearly looked at Holloway and looked at Broberg and thought, okay, well, those are two guys in their 20s who are going to fit nicely in our age demographic here as we try and transition on the fly. So maybe I'm going to have to pay Broberg a bit more than I want, but I think there's more there than what we saw in Edmonton. And he's 100% right. Okay. So then you get poor Drew Bannister, who by all accounts is a pretty good coach. I mean, decent coach at the American League level, earned his stripes to get the NHL bench. Jamie Montgomery gets plugged by the Boston Bruins, and Army's like, that guy's better, so I'm going to get him. And just dispatches Drew Bannister. And Montgomery is a hell of a coach, and he deserves the credit. But then you go further down the path, and I think it was in January when Army didn't like the way that this team was trending, and basically went into the room and said, okay, we're going to make some changes here. Some of you guys aren't going to like it. And some of you have trade protection. Don't care. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a way. So the message was that, if you guys want to go through a renovation, then you're going to force me into that position. I don't think we need to do that. I think that we can improve, add some pieces here, but we do have the core of a team, a nucleus of a team that needs to be and should be much better. And it took off. And that's also why, guys, now to bring you into my world a little bit, like all the stuff around Braden Shen was 100% accurate about him being in play. Now you get into that game of semantics. Was Armstrong shopping him, or was he just listening? Well, he was listening. He's this captain. And a real good piece of that organization. But if somebody would have stepped up with an offer that he had to consider, of course he would have. But I also think that he's devious enough to like the idea of Braden and everybody in that room being uncomfortable with the possibility that the captain of the Blues could get traded on March 7th. He was fine with that as a manager because it just squeezed a little bit more juice out of certain guys.
You know what else too is we're really smart, Dregs. Like, we sit here, we do a show every day, we know, and we'll sit. Cam Fowler, I don't know what that are they old? Are they young? What are they? Kind of question. And I was just thinking of as you were talking there, he got out from under the Brandon Saad contract. Tried to trade him, put him on waivers, not terminate the contract. Sure, okay. So he saved the money off the cap. He's not even eating dough there, and they're way better off without Saad. It's gone his way as of late, for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan. Did you have something?
You're good. I mean, look, the Blues are the hottest team in the league. They look unreal right now, and I think one of these things with these deep playoff races, you got 4, 5, 6 teams in the East, 3 or 4 in the West. Whoever gets in is going to be the hot one. Like, there's never any easy matchups. So that's why this tournament's so great. We literally saw the greatest regular season team ever lose to an 8 seed in round 1 2 years ago.
Yeah, and look, I mean, every year at the GM meetings in March, Bettman is asked about playoff expansion and changing the playoff scenario, right? Changing the matchups so that you can avoid some of what we're going to see in the first round. And to his credit, he always says the same thing. I don't know why we keep asking the same question, but he's like, if you look at the regular season and how it's going to finish, it's playoff hockey and has been since February?
Nations, right? That's kind of felt.
That's the way it's been. So what is wrong with that? And then, it's unfortunate that good teams are going to get dispatched in round 1. But last time I checked, to hoist the Stanley Cup, you've got to beat the best teams, whether that's in round 1 or it's in round 4. So I don't think that hockey fans are suffering when a team like the Edmonton Oilers gets bumped by the Los Angeles Kings in a 7-game series. Okay, well, sorry, but if that is what comes to fruition, that just means that the Oilers weren't better. They weren't good enough, even though they're loaded with stars. So, I think it's going to be a fascinating finish in the regular season. And then, the way it looks right now, that first round matchup on both sides of the conference. So you think Toronto wants to go after Tampa Bay again in round 1 or even Florida?
Yeah.
I mean, the advantage here is that Toronto doesn't have to play Boston again. That's the only advantage. But, they piss away a point versus San Jose, so it doesn't appear like they're overly motivated to win their division. But, again, that's all part of the intrigue and the drama that builds going into the postseason.
Give us a little more on Torts being relieved of his duties. I know these guys have talked about it a bunch the last couple of days, but there's been sort of a new layer to that today where it sounded like he and Cam York got into an incredibly heated dispute to the point where I think the team's going to discipline York, but couldn't their last game because you're not allowed to play shorthanded by a certain number.
Well, they had to dress him, and he sat on the bench and never played a shift.
Yeah.
So can you imagine that? Like,
it's a Rob Ray move. He did that a lot.
It's so old school. Like,
like 17 games without a shift. It's
really?
Oh, yeah.
That many?
So, yeah, I mean, what I was told, and I saw Kevin Kurz from The Athletic, was very specific and said that there was some sort of verbal altercation between Cam York and John Tortorella. So automatically I'm like, well, I better dig a little deeper. Like, no one put hands on anyone here, did they? And of course not. That didn't happen. But what I was told was that, and I think Kurz used this same line, and I was told the same thing, so maybe we have the same source, that lines were crossed here. And, it wasn't just the comments from Tortorella on Tuesday after the loss to the Leafs, but I mean, he basically said, I'm not a coach to coach this type of team in this type of scenario at this point of the season. It was a public acknowledgement that I think I'm going to get fired. And then you go into Wednesday, and I think that's where the exchange between York and Tortorella happened. And all I was told was that management just had no choice at that point. They had to step in, and they had to say, Torts, you're done. Because as of trade deadline, they still felt like they were going to get to the offseason, and then they were going to have a conversation with John Tortorella about what he wanted to do. Because you remember when Briere and Jones came on board, Torts, all that, and they acknowledged that Torts had a chair at the management table, which is a bit weird. Lots of coaches in the NHL have heavy influence, but the thinking was that when he was done coaching, maybe he would morph into management in some capacity. Well, that's not happening now. He's been kicked to the curb in a big way. So it got pretty salty on Wednesday in Philadelphia, no doubt about that.
So where are you at on him? He's got 1 year left at $4 million. We often see that the coaches take that year, take the money, get some vitamin D, as Rhett would recommend, and then return to. Is he still a guy that you would put in that top class of coaches? That is it like this is one too many? Like when Bob Hartley left here, you knew that was it, and next thing you know, it's the K and it's Latvia. But then the other side, I saw someone online saying this is the perfect guy for the Rangers right now.
Yeah. Well,
like veterans. Yeah, I could see that.
Chris Kreider's like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's like, look, I'll make it miserable, but we'll play well. Like the problem with Torts is this was a young team; it never worked for me.
Like, is he to that point? Is he still a guy that maybe a team? Well, we weren't thinking of. We were maybe going to go into next year with this coach and see how it starts, but maybe we'll make a change this offseason and bring in Torts.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, the New York Rangers are the only team that right now makes sense, and the reason I feel like that is no disrespect to Peter Laviolette. It's because I know James Dolan, the owner of the New York Rangers, loves John Tortorella. And that owner has a ton of clout. So, let's see what happens. If they miss the playoffs in New York, all bets are off. I mean, maybe Chris Drury has some sort of vote of confidence that he's coming back as general manager, but I can't be sure of that. I don't know that to be certain. What I do know is that, again, you've got a very hands-on, volatile owner who is not going to sit back and go, status quo, that works. I'm comfortable with the way things are. He does like John Tortorella. So that would be a scenario that does make some sense. And given the fact that the team is still largely a veteran-based team, it might make sense from Tort's perspective as well. Beyond that, though, I thought that when things went completely off the rails so quickly in Vancouver with Tortorella, he was done there. I thought that he was going to mold and wear that one forever. And lo and behold, it didn't take that long. Bang, he's back in the league, and he's carried on ever since. So the true thing that I admire about the man, though, is he just goes down swinging every single time. and it's my way or the highway. And I think he has evolved and changed over time in terms of how the game has changed and how you can't play that same style anymore. But in terms of his attitude and his approach with players and all of that, he knows that he's got a shelf life as a coach, and I don't think he loses a second of sleep over it.
Well, you were talking to Sarich the other day about the dress code, and you talk about evolving and changing.
Oh yeah, he was real strict about all that.
Torts was,
you look sharp, you come to the rink all dialed up. I swear to sweater be on the bench. It's like
yeah.
Okay.
Tracksuit and sweater behind the bench. Things
That's
have changed.
Can I ask you? I asked Noodles this on Wednesday, and I think I asked you it wasn't last week, however long ago, but about Chicago, and Chicago being a destination. And now Bedard, everyone's riled up, and he's not going to re-sign. What the hell is going on? Like, this feels like a huge disaster, just waiting to like.
Yeah, it feels that it does. And look, we had a real quick conversation with Kyle Davidson, the general manager, last week in Florida. And in fairness, it was more, not to get too personal with him, but he's talked about it openly, publicly, about a congenital heart issue that he has, that he just recently had to get, checked on, and there was a procedure. So he's got a lot going on in his life, let alone trying to manage everything that's all over the place with the Chicago Blackhawks. So don't take this as inside information, but there is a sense around those who are reasonably close to the Chicago Blackhawks that there's got to be some form of change coming. And what does that mean? I really feel like Kyle Davidson needed a veteran voice, right? Like he absolutely needed that. When he was named general manager, they should have named, a president of hockey operations first, and then let that person go down that path, and then decide if Kyle Davidson's the right candidate. Perfect. That's fine. The two-headed monster, in my opinion, works, right? Craig Conroy is surrounded by experienced management types, right? I wouldn't think there'd be too many days where he doesn't lean on Maloney or Dave Nonis, and, he's got Brad Pascal. I mean, different voices. Like, and Davidson has some of that, but that's such a hockey rich market that to think that Kyle Davidson is going to be able to put all the pieces back to get this team to a place where we're not now questioning the future of Connor Bedard with the Blackhawks at that age, it feels like help is required. Experienced veteran help. Kenny Holland's name has always been drifting out there, right? Like just how we know he wants to get back into the league. I know that there are teams that have approached him recently about an advisory role, something like that. Maybe he'd be a real good fit there in some capacity, but that's kind of some of the change that I see. Could be bigger than that. Maybe it's less in Chicago, but there's got to be something coming in the offseason.
Another high pick coming in this offseason.
Yeah,
some good players.
Chicago and San Jose, eh? That Schaefer kid.
Honestly, I look at them, man. Like they're going to be really good. I don't think it's that far away.
Yeah, no, San Jose. I agree.
Yeah, and I know Greer's taken some heat, like especially on the CC deal, because it helped Edmonton get out of a jam, and no one wanted to see that. But you look at what he took for getting Jake Wallman a second, turns it around, adds a first from Edmonton. Like, he all of a sudden has a really nice stable of young players, a bunch of picks still, and he's going to have another top 3 pick. And I already like the young guys they have. Toffoli was a great signing.
Yeah, but it's like Boomer said earlier, LA is in a way different place than the San Jose Sharks. But most hockey fans, unless you're a diehard, aren't paying close attention to what Mike Grier and the San Jose Sharks are doing outside of the obvious. Like Macklin Celebrini is going to be a superstar in the National Hockey League. We can kind of see that already. I think Grier's a sharp general manager. I do. He just goes about his business. He's got real good ownership support there. But there's a ton of work that needs to be done, obviously. But I'm with you guys. I don't think San Jose is that far away anymore. I don't.
I was going to call up Rhett. We have a meat market here in town that we're big fans of. Bonton meats. Greg Keller's great. And Rhett puts in. Can we call it? I mean, we've got the order, the list of what it was. And then you went and it was literally kind of a hand crate or a hand cart on wheels that you needed to
not a basket, Dregs.
Get this all trucked out there. You were going to get, so I mean, it's how many chickens? Do you have it there?
Oh, the list.
I sent this to Jack.
Because I was going to say, do you go to it's like, I need so many pounds of ground beef and chicken and turkey because
you gotta fill the freezer.
You're a meat connoisseur, as we know.
Yeah. I've got a guy. About an hour away who has grass-fed beef, and I'm not, into the organic stuff. Like, I mean, how can it be 100% organic? Who knows what these creatures are eating? Anyway, I'm looking at the order here, Rhett's order. Very, very, very similar. Very similar. So yes. Yeah. I mean, maybe not as significant. This is a big order. This is a very, very big order. But I'm just
soak it all in.
But you have 3 young boys. You got 3 teenage boys.
Yeah.
We do have a listening audience, Dean. Could you
right. So it's 22-pound packs of ground beef and then 10 ground pork turkey, 25 double packs of skinless chicken breast, 25 New York strips, 25 fillets, a dozen baseball ribeyes, 4 beef ribs, 2 prime rib roasts, size to feed 8.
I like it.
And you up. Were they? How happy were they to see you? I understand. Maybe you're maybe going to be able to help fund.
I'll leave you guys with this because I know we're up against it. But you wouldn't do it with the prime rib roast. But Rhett, you're going to love this. I just bought this meat slicer.
Oh, I have one.
Do you? Oh. So I just put a roast in the smoker this week.
Oh,
and just thin, razor thin sliced roast beef. Oh, boys.
Stack it up.
I got a slicer too, Dregs.
If we ever get you out here, I know Greg's he'd want to put on a show with some meat for you. So I figured you'd appreciate that.
That's fantastic.
Take care of yourself, bud. Good to talk to you as always.
All right, guys. Have a great week.
You bet. Darren Dreger, TSN Hockey Insider, our insider here on the Crystal Waters Plumbing and Heating. Come on.
Slice it thin. It's just it's the same with cheese. The thinner you slice it, the better it tastes. Somehow.
Yeah. It was Kramer, right? When he was slicing the meat there in Jerry's kitchen.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.